Let's start. Good morning, everyone, to this roundtable on extractivism in the framework of our International Trade Union Forum on ecological and social transitions, which started on Monday and which will take place until Saturday. Now, of course, in the coming days, there are other roundtables on transport, on alliances, on transnational mobilization. So I really encourage you to attend those as well. Now, in our roundtable around the topic of extractivism, our objective is indeed to exchange so that we can, at the end of the week, come up with an appeal, of course, addressed to the COP26, but also to make sure that we have synergies that are created among us. The forum is organized in partnership with Rosa Luxemburg Foundation, with the TUED and CGT, among others. So as regards this particular forum, it's true that we decided to organize this forum in a particular framework. Now we're using, of course, our own methodology. We're working around certain topics with our partner organizations. On each subject, we have people, partners who've registered. The idea is to come together so that we can reflect together on these topics. Now, we have chosen this afternoon a couple of panelists. These panelists have already met before. They've had 2 meetings that allowed them to exchange, to present their alternatives, and they themselves have really built the program of this afternoon. So we're really building on their discussions today. Among those panelists, who do we have? Well, I hope that many of them will join us later. We have Abassam Munkaila, who's represented Sumpramin, who is a trade union in Niger of workers in the mining industry. Now, I don't know if it's Natalia Levitskaya who's connected, I believe, or Mikhailo Volinets. They will be able to introduce themselves anyway. They represent the second trade union confederation in Ukraine. We have Comisiones Obreras from Spain with Mariano Sanz. And Pablo Frutos Rodriguez, I believe, is also with us. I think I saw his name. Normally, we should have our comrades from Madagascar who are representing Cradillo, an environmental organization in Madagascar. Alassane Ba of CSA Senegal. We also have Souheila Dogan for Union of Ecology in Turkey. Welcome to you, Souheila. Basalma Basiliev of CGT Burkina Faso. Yvonne, who's representing the Plataforma Climática. And normally she should be connected from Quito in Ecuador, Jose from Galicia in Spain, and normally Rufina Dabo from Senegal. So our apologies if we have small technical bugs here. As you can see, we're connected with the rest of the world. And I know that with Africa in particular, it's a bit difficult, but I know that our comrades have made all the necessary efforts. It's not always so easy, but I'm sure we'll get through this perfectly well. During this roundtable, we will, of course, talk about many topics: the role of multinationals, the position, the report, the relationship between the North and the South, the questions of health, of security, the question of democracy in the mining sector, and of course, the mutations, the transitions, the energy transitions in the extraction industry and its impact on workers. Now, the debate is organized, of course, in 3 stages. First of all, we will give the floor to our comrades. They will share their experiences. They will talk about, well, their own realities in the field. Then later on in the next session, where other comrades will then take the floor on the stakes, on the challenges and issues in that framework. And the third part will perhaps be the more important one. And then I will, of course, resort to my brother here, Romain, who's the one who really organized the whole forum this week within the CGT. We'll try to really put things in perspective. And that's why I think that's third step, that's the stage will be the more important one. Now, I'm not saying that we'll come up with solutions here and here immediately, but perhaps we'll have some idea of what to do in terms of strategies, in terms of the pathways we need to take to change the force of power between us and multinationals. All right, let's get to it. As far as this first part is concerned, after each and every one of our sessions, through the chat, you'll have the possibility to ask your questions. Our moderators are there. We will then read your questions. We'll convey the questions to the moderator. So we'll have first part of the panel will be the state of play, and then we'll have a Q&A, and then I will give the floor to the second moderator, etc., etc. So don't hesitate to put your questions in the chat, and we'll be honored to try to answer them. First part, the state of play, the situation. Well, I'll give the floor to our comrade Abassa in the north of Niger. I know that he's just come back from a huge tour around the country to meet the comrades in the different mines. I would like to thank him very much because I know that his tour was extremely difficult and he's very tired. So thank you, Abassa, for being here. Please tell us about your situation, what's happening around the closure of the mine of Borano Exaresa. Abassa, you have the floor. Yeah, good evening, dear comrades, brothers and sisters. It's a pleasure for me to be there, to be here, and to be able to take part in this roundtable. Can you hear me? So it really is a pleasure to take part in this roundtable, and this is an opportunity for me to talk to you about the situation in Niger. And to talk about the issues that we encounter. Bit of a connection problem here. So I represent the workers in the mining industry, and our trade union is working at different levels. Of course, we represent all around the country in different mines as well. We have a gold mine, as you may know, 2 uranium mines, 1 coal mine, and a cement site, cement mine. This is how we work, where we work in Niger. You know that Niger has important resources in our subsoils that are being extracted and exploited, but unfortunately, we only cover 12% of the territory of the mines. So we really need to work on expanding the trade union presence. Now, our mining resources are exploited by multinationals. We only have one multinational company that is from Niger and that is working in the field of cement. The situation is indeed very worrying. Why? Well, because our mines are being exploited. They yield a huge profit, but our country remains poor. You may know that Niger is one of the poorest countries in the continent, in spite of all those mines. The multinationals, of course, exploit our resources. The particular mine you were talking about is a uranium mine, and the local populations do not benefit from the exploitation of these resources. And you know, we're having huge difficulties even to have access to water. Just to give you an example, the local populations living around the mines don't even have access to water. The situation, as I said, is alarming. As I said, our local population is not benefiting from the exploitation of those mines. As regards the mine of Urano, Urano had already closed one mine in Imororan, but according to the information we've received this week, it seems that Urano will be reopened, and it seems that the company will re-exploit the other mine. There's another mine that has closed. It closed in March. Now, there was a whole closure plan that was set into motion on the 4th of March. So the plan is divided in three components: a more technical component, a social component, and a societal component. Now, we, of course, were more concerned about the social components. Now, in the mine, you've got two types of workers. You've got those working on the sites, and then you've got the subcontractors. Now, the company has accepted to indeed take accompanying measures for those employees of the company, but they also decided to provide for the subcontractors. You have to know that subcontractors are very, very badly paid. They don't have access to any rights. Well, the company has decided also to provide for them. So we launch as well trade union action to make sure that all the workers on the sites are covered, so the employees and the subcontractors. Now you have to know that especially for the subcontractors, the living conditions, the working conditions are very difficult. So what we do is mobilize our workers and we address the company. Now we have around 800 subcontractors that were going to be left in the streets if the company did not take care of them. But the company did react. As I said, we really mobilized in favor of the subcontractors to make sure that they are covered by accompanying measures. Now, the trade union mobilized itself. We, for instance, organized a strike for one day. We tried to come up with an agreement with the employer. And also we tried to work also with the local authorities. The local authorities did not hear us, unfortunately. Now we launched a strike and 90% of workers followed the strike. This, of course, allowed us to open up negotiations with the company, but also with the local authority in order to discuss the solution that we had to put in place in order to safeguard the interest of all the workers. The company, in the end, as I said before, accepted to put in place a plan that would cover all the legal rights and of the workers. The company had already foreseen some measures or also to allow workers indeed to go on with their work or to set up their own company, to have access to benefits. They will vouch for those workers when they look for another job. And there are also compensations being paid to those workers. What I forgot to say is that when, of course, there was the closure that was announced, the closure of the mine. You have to know that in Niger, we did not have any, shall we say, procedure in place, any documentation in place. So the government set up a steering committee to work on the closure of the mine, but there were no references that were available to the steering committee. So we didn't have any benchmark and a previous experience. In the end, the steering committee was not able to fulfill its mission to go on with its job because we didn't have the capacity to go forward. So this is for that particular site. So we really try to mobilize ourselves in order to respond to the needs of subcontractors, and we manage after a couple of months now. The multinationals in Niger are really creating a catastrophic situation in Niger. For instance, as I said, we have in Samira a gold mine. We're very sorry, but the sound is not very good. So we have a mine that is being exploited in a way to benefit the workers, whereas we know that gold has a huge value at international level. What multinationals do is that they come, they exploit our mines, they empty them of the countries of their resources, and then they go away. Now, the state is not present. So there are missions that are being organized by the state, but no intervention of the state. We need, and we're left to our own devices. We can only follow the policy of the company, which is indeed very dangerous, as you may imagine. The problems that indeed we could have in the longer term are huge. Well, we closed the mine today, as I said before. You can imagine what this means also at environmental level, since nobody, indeed, from the authorities is there to impose any rule. So we are social partners in Niger. So what we've done is that we are working on the redevelopment of those sites, because our question is, how long can we go on with this kind of extraction activity? Cominac left the gold mine. We cannot wait for a company to close down, to shut down a mine. We need to anticipate the future need and work on the environmental level as well as the social level as well. Well, that's all I wanted to say as far as Niger is concerned. Sorry for the sound problems. Thank you very much, Abassa.
Parole à Natalia Levinskaya qui représente.
So I'll give the floor to Natalia, who represents the KPVU in Ukraine. And Natalia? Unfortunately, she's... Oh, here she is. Natalia.
Good afternoon, dear brothers and sisters. I represent here Ukraine. I represent the independent trade union of miners of Ukraine, and we include miners who extract coal, and we also have miners who work in the uranium mines. And I would like to tell you what is happening in Ukraine, in our country, and what issues we're facing, our miners are facing when extracting uranium ore and coal. Today, in the capital of Ukraine, in Kiev, there's protest actions of workers from uranium mines. The reason is because this enterprise is not stable in its operations. No attention is paid to safety, and there's a danger of water flooding the uranium mines. So today, the workers came to the governmental agencies and buildings demanding to provide for stable working conditions, and pay salaries on time. You know, the we have to work in a stable way because we have to take care about the safety and ecology in the regions. But unfortunately, what we're witnessing, the government is not paying due attention to the safety. All these three uranium mines, they're not stable in the operations. They work with interruptions, and nobody thinks about the aftermath. And as I mentioned, if there is a danger of flooding, all these dirty water, so to speak, they will flood the neighboring regions, and it could lead to ecological disaster in the regions. It could be worse than Chernobyl, which happened in 1986. Miners made a decision to organize the protest near the cabinet of ministers, near the government office, in order for the government to listen to the issues, to provide all the conditions for stable work, for funding, proper funding, and to provide for stable salaries, etc. As far as coal mines are concerned, in Ukraine, the main extraction and energy is produced from coal. We also represent coal mines, and you probably heard and you probably are aware that unfortunately the situation in our coal mines is extremely difficult and challenging. Naturally, we are aware that Ukraine, having signed the Paris Agreement, taking the obligations, the Ukrainian government will be moving away from coal usage and move to green economy. But, however, the thing is that coal is our energy safety, energy security for Ukraine, and we would like for all processes of reforms to be happening stage by stage, and not to forget about people and the regions, and proper funding should be provided. But unfortunately, there's a big issue with the salaries. They're not paid on time. Those miners who work under extremely difficult conditions, they are not paid on time, and they had to go to strikes and protest actions demanding salaries to be paid. We're receiving information from our enterprises, from our miners. Then again, salaries are not paid. There are some mines where salaries is not paid on time. There's even some mines where there's a backlog of salaries from 2018, from 2019. And the miners are saying that we're ready to go to protest to demand the money we earned honestly. We also witnessing that unfortunately the Ukrainian government is upholding the tactics where they voice the demand, the necessity to reform the coal sector, but they're saying this, they say it in nice pictures and words, but in reality, nothing is being done in order to protect the miners and their families and our coal regions. That is, for the last year, we have witnessed many concepts to reform the coal sector, but unfortunately, all these concepts were, in these all concepts, the people, human beings were forgotten, the regions were forgotten, and there was no mention of exact funding dedicated, for example, if necessary, to requalify miners where they will create future jobs. Nothing of this kind, because for the 30 years of independence, Ukraine closed many coal mines. And what we're seeing when mines are closed, unfortunately, no jobs are being created. So they close the mine. Miners are moved to another mine. Nothing is being created instead of that. We're extremely concerned when regions, especially coal, where coal sector is dominant in the regions, those so-called towns where the there are no other job opportunities other than mines. We don't see new jobs being created there, giving opportunity for people to find deployment there. Naturally, we understand that we need to gradually move to green economy, and this concerns coal sector a lot, but we would like for the Ukrainian government to take in consideration some other experience, taking for example German experience when they were doing it step by steps, while in Ukraine they want to do everything fast without spending much on that, not spending actually not single hryvnia, not spending the currency. Some other countries, Germany for example, they're ready to assist in reforming our coal sector, but being aware of our negative experience and witnessing other reforms, our miners are concerned that if a mine is closed, there will be no other opportunity for them to be employed. So we need to think about the things not in a social aspect only, but also think about environmental aspects. I believe that, and in chat, my colleagues are putting the information about the demonstrations of miners, and in every demonstration, in every protest, there's a demand for salaries. Unfortunately, in the 21st century, Ukraine is violating 95th Convention. Miners are not paid, and our task for our trade unions, we need to make sure when reforming to take into consideration the financial aspect, for the government to think what happens with the regions. If you go, for example, to any coal mining region of Ukraine, other than mines, there's nothing. And that's why it's very important not to forget about the environmental consequences of closing down the mines, because a mine, some of the mines, it's not possible to close them down completely, because they need to pump out water to prevent any danger for the environment. Funding is also needed. That's why we as trade unions demand from the government, when drafting concepts, to take in consideration all the nuances, all the aspects. For example, whether the mine could continue working, operating, what will be offered instead. And we see that we cannot completely give up on coal. Coal is our security as well. And we are fighting now for Ukraine not to import coal from somewhere else, because we have our own resources and we need to provide jobs for our Ukrainian miners. That is, our task is to establish an efficient system to protect coal mines and provide social protection for our miners. That's why I believe that is extremely important for us as trade unions. Today, we're discussing a very important subject. We need to protect our jobs. We need to do everything possible with this. Yes, just transition should be implemented, but we shouldn't forget about workers, about their protection, and do everything to leave this crisis which coal sector ended up in. And naturally, COVID pandemics exacerbated the issue in the sector, lots of issues. And we as trade unions, we need to do everything for all these processes to be step by step, to provide protection to our miners, to provide social protection to our miners, to work in Ukraine, inside the country, rather than live abroad, and to be paid in due time for their hard work. Thank you very much.
Paul? Merci infiniment.
Well, thank you very much, Natalia. Let me apologize. You see that I'm using my phone, but I'm trying to contact some brothers in Africa, so I do apologize. Mariano, from Comisiones Obreras. You're in charge of transport, the environment in your organization. Natalia, in Ukraine, there's a lot of problems linked to coal mining. In Spain, it is also a subject that you've dealt with. So, Mariano, you have the floor. It's a great pleasure to give you.
Good afternoon, everyone. For us, it's a pleasure to be here to participate in this forum. During the preparatory meetings, my colleague Jesus took the floor. He's the responsible of industry and everything related with mines. He's negotiating today a very important collective agreement, and he's asked me to replace him. I'm the Confederal Secretary for Environment and Mobility from Comisiones Obreras. I will explain the last agreement reached related to mining. In the mining sector, we've had 6 big agreements. The first one in 1990, when we had 45,000 miners in our coal mines. When the last agreement was reached, and I'll explain it, we had 525 miners. So there's been a restructuring, a reconversion process, a very important one in this mining sector. These plans are from 1990 are due to the fact that Spain became a member of the European Union, and back then there was the need to close the mines which were in deficit. The last agreement that I'll explain is the agreement signed in October 2018. And back then, it was very necessary. There was a decision from the European Commission 787 stating that the states could no longer give money to the mines in deficit. In the case of Spain, the government was putting a lot of money to keep the profitability of these mines. All the agreements reached in this case, they were signed by UGT and Comisiones Obreras, the most representative organizations in the sector. Well, those agreements were also supported by the ministries, which are the responsible to develop the necessary policies, and was also approved by the European Commission. The framework agreement for just transition in the coal regions goes from 2019 to 2026. It was signed in October between the Environment Ministry, the Employment Ministry, and the trade unions. And a fund was created of 250 million euros to support development initiatives in the mining regions. These initiatives need to be included in a specific plan for each of the affected regions. In Spain, there are 4 affected regions, and on one hand, you have planning to ratify the reform of the spaces occupied by the mines. There's also a plan for renewable energy development and energy efficiency. And there's also something new within these plans, the possibility for the local authorities or regional authorities to sign just transition contracts. These just transition contracts is something that is included in a strategy approved in Spain in February 2019 called Strategy for the Just Transition. And the tool for reactivating the processes and for their governance are these just transition agreements. These are not the usual collective agreements that we usually see between employers and trade unions. It's an agreement basically between the national administrations and the regional and local administrations. The main objective is to develop a global action plan for the affected areas with a calendar to implement measures and with clear commitments related to financing. It has 3 stages. The first is an open process of consultation where information is gathered between the administration. In these open participation processes, all organizations can participate, the very administrations and the representatives of workers. And the objective is to establish a diagnostic of the area and the possible projects to exit coal. Then there's a second stage where one has the possibility to put forward projects. Some of these projects are from the same administration through audit companies who are carrying out diagnostics regarding what type of activities could take place in these areas. And once this has been analyzed, an action plan will be established. And in this plan, we have to bear in mind the objectives that want to be reached, not only environmental, but also social. And all this is coordinated by the Spanish Institute for Just Transition, which is the institute that puts forward these projects. This agreement goes from 2019, and within the agreement there are exceptional measures towards the companies from 2019 until 2025. There are very concrete supports, and there is also the possibility to reactivate with concrete measures in the mining regions. And as I said, in Spain, it's Aragon, Asturias, Castilla-León, and Puerto Llano in Castilla-La Mancha. The agreement tries to include not only the workers of the main companies, but also the subcontracting workers. There are several aspects in the content. There is, firstly, a social plan with pre-retirement possibilities for those workers who are in a special case. There's also an employment facility managed by the administration, and in that facility we include all the workers affected by the closures. Then there is also a plan to retrain the workers, and there is a plan to relocate those workers in activities compatible with their knowledge. There is another aspect related with rehabilitation of those areas affected by the mines. And these aspects could represent important work in 4 or 5 years. And regarding economic rehabilitation, one part is related to infrastructure and another part is related to concrete projects. The main element is the action plan for the mining regions, and currently we are waiting to see whether, besides the issues put forward by the company, if we start to see contracts for just transition, which are fundamental for the development of these areas. I would like to indicate that the development of these plans are very different to the previous coal plants. The previous coal plants were, let's say, included social measures. Mariana, can you hear me?
Oui, non, simplement sur cette première partie.
So for this first part, would you be able to conclude? In the third part, you'll have the opportunity to take the floor again. So I'll give you the floor again, but we need to allow time for the other speakers and also allow time for questions. Thank you very much, Mariano.
Le micro.
Perdona, lo último que iba a decir es
Yes, sorry. Last thing I wanted to mention is that these plans differ from the previous carbon plans because they're joined with action plans with social measures, and they are coordinated with the autonomous communities and work at local level. I can give you more details later if you want. Thank you.
Vous remettez le micro. Merci infiniment, Mariano. Merci infiniment. Je tiens à remercier.
Thank you very much, Mariano. I just wanted to thank I wanted to thank you during your intervention, our two Senegalese comrades and brothers and sisters were able to join us. And Suela is also there. I'm going to give you the floor, and I believe that
Yeah. Hello,
through
everybody.
the means of the fights. I was just introducing you, Suhaila. I will give you the floor.
Okay.
You have the floor. Go for it.
I need to share a screen. Can the moderator allow me to share screen? I would like to share screen.
Yes,
can the moderation?
I'm trying to, sorry.
Okay. I have written before, but you haven't seen maybe. Hello, everybody. My name is Süheyla Doğan. I am from Turkey, from Union of Ecology. I am the spokeswoman. Our Union of Ecology was established in 2017 in Bergamo meeting, and there are 65 members in the union. We have also women and youth assemblies also working together with us. This is the members of the union. As you see, there are from all over Turkey. Both platforms, initiative, associations, small groups are members. I will start with the history of the mining in Turkey, and then I will talk about a special project which we were able to stop. In Ottoman period, there were many capitulations in mining sector. French, German companies were doing all the mining, and there are still very bad mining projects left over from French companies from Ottoman time, which are ruining the environment. In 1923, Turkish Republic was established, capitulations were cancelled, and all the foreign companies were sent out, and the state-owned mining companies started. In 1980s, like many countries, privatization has started in Turkey, and state companies took over all the mining sector, and new companies, new state companies were established. And in 1985, this was a really important date year for us. Foreign investment was invited to Turkey to took over mining. In 2002, AKP, Islamic Right-Wing Party Erdogan, came to power, and they have revised the mining law in 2004. This was also very critical for mining. And with the new changes, with the revision, all of Turkey were open to really mining. All the forest, agricultural areas, preserved areas, pastures, water protection areas were open to mining sector. And also a lot of incentives and tax exemptions were given to multinational companies when they were invited. These are the multinational companies in Turkey now in the mining sector: Eurogold, Eldorado Gold, Normandy, Newmont, Teck Cominco, Chesser, Ariana Resources, Alamos Gold, and so, like many of the third world countries. And this metallurgical mining is sponsored and financed by these banks. As you see, European Bank of Development, EBRD, is one of the biggest financiers of the mining in Turkey. First mining project in Turkey started in 2001. It was Bergama gold mining. At the moment, there are 20 gold mining projects under operation all over Turkey. The purple rounds are gold mining areas in Turkey now. As you see, it's all over Turkey. This is the area where I live. We call it Biga Peninsula. Çanakkale, Dardanelles is in this area. As you see from the map, 79% of the surface of the area is licensed for mining. This is ridiculous. And another city, 75%. Another city, 59%, or licensed by mining. Another city, 22%. I will show some photos from mining areas. These are special gold mining areas in Turkey. And I will talk about a special project, Kirazlı Gold Mining Project, which we have managed to stop. The project area is the blue spot near Çanakkale. The project had started in 1987. Eldorado Gold had the exploration license. Newmont company bought half of the shares later, but they stopped a few years later. In 2002, area was sold to another multinational company, Teck Resources, by the Ministry of Energy, and they continued exploration. And another company bought 40% of the shares. And in 2009, the license were sold to the Alamos Gold Company, which is the last Canadian owner of the mine. And they were going to produce 495,000 ounces of gold and 3 million ounces of silver at the project. And it was for only 6 years. The project area was like this at the beginning. And now the project area is like this existing position. As you see, the forest has gone and all the living in the forest has gone away. We have started fighting against this project since 1987. As you see, it is 34 years of a big fight for this special project. In 2019, they started cutting the forest, and a special committee was formed from municipality of Çanakkale and also NGOs. It was called Water and Conscience Watch Committee. Committee invited people from all over Turkey to put tents in this special area, which is close to the mining area. And the call was approved by many people, many NGOs. Many people came here and established their tents, and watching has started in this area, as you see. And a lot of exhibitions, concerts, theater shows done, panels, discussions were done at this watch area, which is only 1 kilometer from the gold mining project. Quite often we had many demonstrations near the mining area. And there was a big meeting at August 2019. 20,000 people came to the mining area. And as you see, many people from all over Turkey, also from abroad, some visitors. And we have entered to the mining area altogether, which the doors were broken and they couldn't do anything. We have occupied the main mining area. And one of the Turkish very famous musicians, Fazıl Say, had a concert in the near the mining area, as you see here from the photo. It was a very big event. You see the tents. There were also big tents. And there was a very old building coming from Forest, Ministry of Forestry. And we have also repaired this building and used it for our watching. Children were at the site. We have watched the area for 125 days. It was a really very big watch. And we have asked from the energy Ministry of Energy not to elongate the license of the company. After our fight, after our struggle, the license was not renovated. So all the
Une belle vie.
yeah.
Effectivement, une très belle victoire.
Indeed, quite a victory, Suhaila,
Yes.
if I may.
Yes. We have demonstrated every Saturday in Çanakkale, apart from the main watching area, as you see here, every Saturday. And women also were in front always, all the villagers, women. Apart from gold mining, there are very many other projects in this.
Suhaila.
Thank you very much, Suhaila.
Okay.
This is a very interesting presentation.
Yes, this was the last. Okay, thank you.
Par rapport, écoute.
Perfect timing, Suhaila. Thank you very much. Yeah. Al-Hassan Ba from Senegal. I am now going to give you the floor. You are there, I believe. Apparently, your microphone is on. Al-Hassan, you're a member of a CSA. Now he's going to talk about the extraction industry, gas extraction in Senegal, were large areas have been exploited by the gas mining industry. Thank you very much. Dear comrades, brothers and sisters, good day to all participants. We're extremely happy to be able to take part in this very important event that will allow us to have very fruitful exchanges, I'm sure, that will allow us to perhaps talk about the future of the carbon industry and the coal industry, rather, in Senegal. First of all, I would like to thank Comrade Munkaila because he really presented the present situation in Senegal. Now, it's true that we're a bit pessimistic because indeed Senegal is thinking about how to exploit its oil and gas reserves as of 2023. Indeed, in Senegal, we've discovered that we had gold, iron, and oil and gas. Now, regarding gas and oil, and gas in particular, Senegal, in order to promote our competitiveness, adopted Law 98 in 2005 on the oil code. Now, it was offering gas companies very beneficial conditions in order to develop their activities with the search, the exploration and extraction of gas and oil. Now, you had the legal framework, which has really stepped up the investment from companies, and this has resulted in the development and the beginning of the exploitation of natural gas on our country. So we had indeed onshore gas, and also this has allowed them to finance studies, also to exploit gas and oil offshore. Now, there were as well indeed other explorations that were carried out in order to indeed see if we had oil and gas reserves elsewhere. And of course, in 2015, many companies have indeed come to the country. There is between Mauritania and Senegal a huge mine of gas. This was discovered in 2015, as I said. And last July, it was discovered that this particular gas reserves will be able to be exploited until 2035, creating $2 billion a year in yields for both countries, for each of the two countries. But I just wanted to say that we're still preparing the ground. So we'll really need to see what the consequences of the exploitation of this gas mines will be, especially at environmental level. So we need to ask ourselves the question, what is going to happen at the environmental level so that we can indeed perhaps raise awareness among our decision makers. We want to prevent all those risks that are inherent to the exploitation of the gas deposits. Senegal is very much relying on its fisheries. So 60 to 70% of its population is active in the field of fisheries. So our coastline is indeed very important, but it could be in the hands of multinationals for the exploitation of gas and oil. Now, you know, there's a huge migrant wave arriving from Senegal. This means that we already have an issue, a social issue. People do not have a job. That's one issue. The other issue is that our government does not have the means to carry out impact assessment studies. So on that basis, can we really rely on the impact assessment studies presented by the multinationals? They will defend their own perspective, of course. They will work for their own interests. Are they going to provide us with all the information to the Senegalese and the Mauritanian governments? We need a counter expertise from the side of our states to have a transparent impact assessment. And we're asking from the Senegal government to really indeed ask for an independent study to be carried out. in terms of the environmental impact. Now, of course, this requires means that states like Senegal do not have available. In terms of technology, well, we have a refineries, which is a small capacity refinery. But other than that, we don't have any infrastructure in order to exploit oil and gas deposits. And for that, we need to have perhaps exchanges, discussions between the state and trade union, civil society organizations as well, in order to really make sure that we have a framework in place so as to make sure that the oil and gas exploitation benefit the population. I don't want to be too long because we'll have a second round here, but to end my presentation, I will ask a question. Now, of course, the riches, the gas and oil riches, will they benefit the local populations? Well, future will tell. Thank you. Thank you very much, Alassane, for this testimony. You are the Secretary General in charge of energy in the trade union, or the autonomous or the independent trade union confederation in Senegal. This is the end of our first part. Now, in order to keep the time and stay within the allocated time, I had suggested that we'll have a Q&A session. So perhaps we will collect all your questions and we will deal with them by the end of our webinar. Let's start with the second part. Let's talk about, of course, all those issues that you are all confronted with. I would like to give the floor to Basolma, who is the Secretary General of the CGT in Burkina Faso, on indeed this very central issue that is the extraction industry and the stakes for the sovereignty of the state. I think you can perhaps develop that particular subject. Basolma, you have the floor.
Nous t'écoutons.
OK, merci bien. À l'endroit de l'ensemble.
Thank you very much to all the members and participants. I sent my greetings to, and I would like to congratulate the speakers for the depth of their presentations. I would like to tell you that I'm the General Secretary of CGT in Burkina, which is made up of about 20 professional unions and federations, about 100 committees. There is a professional union for mining, the National Union for Geology. As an introduction, let me stress the key role of extractivism. When we speak about ecological transition, it raises the issue of sovereignty, the role of institutions, the interference of multinationals, fundamental issues. The issue of sovereignty is not the same in all regions of the world. It means that any nation, any country should be available to benefit from the social, cultural dimensions. Burkina Faso, an ex-French colony, experiences this sovereignty in these different dimensions. Economic power today has an influence on the world, which it can build or destroy. And this affects us seriously every day. This power, which is in the hand of multinationals, which can bring or destroy power, they are able to interfere, to plunder, to commit crimes in full impunity. So in many countries, the situation that has been described in the previous presentations include this catastrophic situation with very little hope for development, where the environment is destroyed, underground water, surface waters are destroyed. There is no impact on the social, economic development of the communities. Young people thus have to go over the oceans, risk death. There is an endemic poverty which has been exacerbated by the pandemic, and some families can't survive. Today, several initiatives against the climate crisis, against pollution, against social inequalities, such initiatives are created, are reinforced on the basis of solidarity, because multinationals work in solidarity with each other, and we too have to create solidarity at the international level to face them and to have some hope of real social progress. Multinationals get organized to plunder people, so we must make sure that people in the world can be in solidarity to face that situation. And this is the very aim of our meeting today, and I would like to congratulate all those who made brilliant presentations. I'll stop there and I'll take the floor again later on. Thank you. Thank you so much. You've been very short and it was extremely relevant. Yvonne in Quito. Yvonne, you're here. So to do away with fossil fuel consumption, you've taken the floor many times on that issue. Could you perhaps develop that point? I give you the floor. You have the floor.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much. I will speak in Spanish. I'll give you time to choose the right channel. I will talk for 5 minutes, as I was asked. And I will ask the moderator if I go beyond the 5 minutes to tell me. First of all, greetings to all participants to this international forum on a very important issue, the transitions. The concept of transition is a concept being used by many people, many sectors, business sectors, employers, governments, financial institutions, international and financial institutions, the World Bank, the IMF. So it's now fashionable to use the term transition, but from 30 years ago, 20 years ago, the organizations and the social movements, the peasants' movement, the indigenous movement, the trade union movement, have been asking for the last 20 or 30 years a change in the model, exploiting less populations, less polluting, and useful for the good of the humanity. But it hasn't been the case because we are going backwards. there's more and more oil exploitation, and that leads to more environmental and social problems, more workers' exploitation, more ocean pollution, and obviously more climate change, more loss of biodiversity. The insects in the world are disappearing, and that will lead to a food crisis in the next years. So why now we talk so much about transition? We are 20 years late. In the case of Ecuador and Latin America, many of our countries have oil, and our economies depend on oil in many cases. And only for a few years, in the case of Ecuador, we have oil for 10 years. And at the level of the state, they don't speak about a transition. Well, they do speak about a transition, a green transition, but in reality, it's a transition that deepens in capitalism, in workers' exploitation, and deepens the impact of the environment in Europe and in other parts of the world. They talk about a green transition with green employment to produce wind farms or solar panels, but they don't review the impact of that work in the south, the impact of lithium exploitation, or the a certain kind of wood for the production of windmills. So it's very important that when we speak about transition, we talk about this. We need a dialogue amongst workers, a dialogue with the organizations at the head of this fight against capitalism, because the trade unions and the union members are not the only ones fighting the indigenous population, the peasants in the world with Via Campesina. So there can't be a fight of rights. There can't be a confrontation of rights between the exercise of the labor, economic and social rights, and at the same time undermine the rights of the population where oil is extracted, where coal is extracted, where the minerals are extracted, copper, lithium and others, for this energy transition and to generate employment. And to conclude, I think it's very important, and this forum establishes three big issues that we need to resolve. The energy transition. We need now an energy transition, and it cannot start in 20, 30, 50 years. The energy transition needs to start now. And it's not about replacing the amount of energy produced by coal, oil, or gas by an energy that is produced with certain minerals, because it uses the nature and undermines populations. And the second big issue that we want to resolve is the sectoral transition. I think we need to break with this idea of modernity, stating that there are sectors here, the mining sector here, the oil sector there, the indigenous people there. I think that a challenge for the trade unions, in this case for the CGT and all the other organizations participating in this forum, is that we need to break with this idea of sector, because it's like a cluster and it doesn't allow us to build a transition from the population, all of us, women, because it's a men's capitalism, the populations of the South and the villages of the communities devastated by the exploitation of mineral resources, oil, and obviously we're all affected by climate change. So we need to break with the idea of a sector and have a transition where there is a link of needs and proposals. And finally, the construction of the power. And I love that idea because who builds popular power? Who and how we are building this popular power, the workers to improve their salaries, the indigenous population not to open extraction, women because they're fighting in the trade unions to have more power as women workers, the young urban people are fighting, and farmers, etc. So the power relations will only take place when all the population and all the people will get together to confront what is going on in terms of economic and social crisis. We have to fight against the business power, not only the transnational private corporation power. There's also and many public companies acting as private companies and only caring for profits. So the power relations need to be established in unity without a confrontation of rights, included the environmental rights, and it needs to be built from the populations and the capitalism power with businesses, with the public and private banks, and obviously against those who are using populations, women, and nature. So I've talked for 8 minutes. Thank you very much for listening, and greetings from the Latin America Platform for Climate Justice. It's a regional organization. We're reflecting on all these issues, energy, climate change, and solutions from the population. Thank you very much.
Merci, Yvonne.
Thank you very much, Yvonne José. I think that on the last points mentioned by Yvonne, there is an easy transition because multinationals which are close to governments, you wanted to speak about that issue. So I give you the floor, José. You have the floor.
Good afternoon. Congratulations and thank you for this initiative. Really interesting. We are the Galician Confederation and we're proud to cooperate and collaborate through the different workshops to this forum. We're talking about extractivism, and therefore I'll try to analyze its relation with colonialism and the lack of sovereignty. Unfortunately, there are populations, territories, and people having a lot of difficulties because they don't have resources. But there are other people and communities and countries where the ownership of big resources represents their downfall. These populations are victims of the big capital and their governments. If we look backwards, we can see that the majority of wars are due to precisely this. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, having 80% of some of the minerals are their disgrace, because this provokes armed conflicts between the different tribes provoked by the big mining multinationals. The Sahara conflict won't be able to resolve due to their important mineral and fishing resources under the interest of the big powers. We can go on with the blockage in Venezuela. I suppose that that is due to their big oil reserves and what is going on also in the Middle East. We don't only see this in the global south, because maybe the global south reaches the north, because in my country, in Galicia, we have the very same problem. We are fortunately enough to have big resources, big reserves of resources, and the disgrace to have external agents who do not affect the life of our people. And despite of devastating big parts of our territory. When we talk about extractivism, we talk about colonialism, exploitation, and terrorism also. That's our opinion. 2,000 years ago, the Romans came to our territory with the aim to loot what we had. So we started 2,000 years ago. Currently, 20 centuries after, we see the same process. We had the invasion from the Romans or the populations, but now we have the invasions of the big multinationals using our resources and not giving anything in exchange. This is what I call the Neo Extractivism, something that started at the end of the 20th century and that continues nowadays with an incredible rhythm extraction from the big companies, especially in the global south, but not only, and in agreement with the respective governments, local, regional, national, which made it possible because they adapted their own legal framework to facilitate the work of these multinationals with the fake promise that the benefits will go to the population, and something that never saw the light. And this is the reason why there are local, social, and environmental conflicts. Like during the colonialism, we see asymmetric relations, domination from the old metropolis, from the global north towards the global south. They don't try to improve the quality of life. They go beyond human rights. They destroy nature in exchange of money. They're not interested in the community or the villages that they will destroy. These projects are genocide projects. A key element of extractivism is the logic of the strongest, the ones who have money, they have arms, they can access human resource, natural resources, even if they go against the populations. And we've seen it in the past, and the rhythm has accelerated in the last years. So the domination of capital in respect of life, there is a consolidation of inequalities, and this is what we call accumulation by dispossession. These policies led to loss of sovereignty. And I'm not only talking about political sovereignty, but all sorts of sovereignty: food sovereignty, environmental, economic, energetic sovereignty. In the energy field, this process has been a continuous process of giving, regardless of the color of the government. They've fallen in the arms of the multinationals' policies are related to these groups, and through processes of privatization. We've seen it in Galicia. I will put in the chat some examples of some of the mines, the coal mines for energy or for lithium. The problem of sovereignty is a double problem, because on one hand, we have government accomplices with the big multinationals, and on the other hand, the power and the decision making takes place in the center of the state.
No contaron con nosotros.
This is why I think they did not count on us. Just as Mariano was saying, we were not involved, despite Galicia being one of the main mining production spots, and Galicia having a lot of trade union representation. If we're a country that has the right to energy, we see important life expectancies, but we see that some continents, such as Africa, we see that with the lack of access to energy, the life expectancy drops significantly. So I think we need to stress the fight for the sovereignty of the people, especially in countries that have a lot of extractivism. And the European Union has given the practical and legal conditions for multinationals to act the way they want. And they've also gone to the point of changing their constitutions, their laws. And we see the cases of those commerce agreements and free trade agreements that we see once and again. We see courts that are just ruling in the interests of the strongest. Unless we defend the sovereignty of the peoples, we won't be able to put a halt of this colonial sovereignty that the states and the companies are having. We need to have popular sovereignty. It is the people that have to have the control of their own resources, and for them to be doing it in a sustainable way, and for profit to be used for the service of communities. So we need to redefine our development projects, our development models. The pandemic has clearly shown the way things are. This crisis, this pandemic, has shown how companies, how workers, healthcare workers, workers that were working on the first line,
que vienen efectivamente a aprovecharse de nuestros recursos. Por lo tanto, bueno, como creo que igual me extendí ya mi tiempo, dejo esta reflexión sobre lo que el extractivismo supone y cómo condiciona efectivamente a la posibilidad de extractivismo.
And see how to promote safe extractivism and the sovereignty of the peoples.
En tout cas, je vous remercie. Le décor est planté au travers de ces multiples exemples.
Thank you very much. I think you set the framework with all these examples. José, Baselman, Yvonne have indeed talked about the more general issues and challenges that we are confronted with. Very well. Now, for this third part of the roundtable, I suggest that we really take a very practical approach. And in the chat, many have asked, well, what do we do against the power of multinationals? Very concretely, what are the strategies that we can put in place between civil society organizations, trade union organizations, the local populations? I think that's a very good question, and I think that this is the main question that will allow us perhaps to start this third part, and this is what we're going to work on. I'm now going to give the floor to Romain, who's going perhaps to ask you, how do you envisage this work in solidarity? We're talking here about active solidarity, active solidarity actions in the extraction industry faced with those multinationals, these huge corporations that may give you the impressions that there are no solutions. Romain, can you hear me? Yes, indeed. Well, thank you. Thank you very much to all the brothers and sisters, to all the comrades for their interventions. I think that you've really summed up our work, our previous work, because in the two previous working groups, we did find that there were huge differences amongst each other, but also a lot of commonalities. And I hope that you've all been able to see the convergences in the different presentations of our brothers and sisters and our comrades. So thank you very much for that. I'm not going to perhaps deal with very specific issues. I think we have indeed here a dialogue that is going on. Jose already perhaps said very important things. Rufina is there for the Federation of Scientific of Workers in the field of sciences, the scientific workers. And perhaps, yes, she will talk about the link between what the scientific community is doing, is saying, and of course what the industry is saying. I would say that there are like three main areas we could work on. There are probably more. But during the working groups, what we said, and we said it today again, the issue was, well, how to really create solidarity links as wide and as broad as possible between trade unions, civil society organizations, citizens, at international level as well. The international level was put on the table, of course, many times faced with corporations, with multinationals. We have also international organizations, trade union organizations, or civil society organizations that are organized at the international level, and we need to, of course, leverage. And this was, of course, one of the aim of this forum, to have more horizontal discussions on, for instance, on the code of conduct of environmentalists. So what is the alternative project that we can put forward when a mine is being closed, for instance? Now, these are some of the things that we've said during the working group. And perhaps a third issue, the intersectoral links. I think this was mentioned as well. We're talking here about all the industries: transport, energy, extraction industry. The very beginning of the forum, we had quite a few discussions on those industries as well. We all depend on raw materials. And as Basolma said, of course, we need to ask ourselves, what do we do with our need of raw materials? I will perhaps ask you to be as short as possible in your intervention so that we can give the floor to as many people as possible. So first Rufina and then Mariano. Yes, hello everybody. First of all, thank you for inviting me and invited the FMPS to take part in the forum of the FMPS, which I have the honor of representing today. Hello to everybody. I had indeed suggested a summary. I have a text that I would like to read out. Am I allowed to read my text very quickly? And may I share my screen as well? If I can't share the screen, of course, I can read it without anything appearing on the screen. But apparently I do have the possibility to share the screen. Voilà. Here we are. Well, in the preparatory meetings, we talked about a very relevant question in a very sensitive and important topic, and that is the extraction of mining resources. Well, you see, that's my introduction. So it is very desirable indeed to have indeed exchanges with the local populations, with the indigenous populations, and with all the organizations that are stakeholders in the mining industry in order to anticipate the possible conflicts of interest that could be the source of dramatic situations and contradictions between the state and the citizens. I have taken on board a couple of issues. So the extraction industry and its link to capitalism. I think that there is a contradiction in that link, and that is the model, the economic model that puts the capital at its core. But we need an economic model that puts the human at its core. So for the sake of a sustainable development and for the environment. Also, I put in my sentence indigenous or autochthonous populations. It's true that we talked about local populations, but it's not the same. In the proposal of topics, you talked about feminism, about feminists. And I think that we talk about women's organization more than feminist organization. We shouldn't indeed forget young people in the pictures that we've been shown as well. You've seen young people, for instance, the mobilization in Turkey. Well, young people were there, children were there to show that they wanted also to work for a better environment for the future. In here, I also refer to abuses, open minds, etc. There are, of course, advantages, but there is, of course, there are the huge issues of soil pollution, the pollution of subterraneous water resources. We have somebody else whose mic is open. So we are going to share some of the statistics for the world. In Senegal, for instance, there are mines that are being exploited ever since the 1950s. Can you hear me, Rufina? Rufina, listen, we only have 20 minutes and we really need to make sure that we abide by the time because our interpreters unfortunately cannot stay longer. Can I please ask you to put your presentation on the chat with the different links, because apparently you put a lot of information. It would be a pity not to be able to share that information, but I see that this document is several pages long. So if we read it, we will not have the possibility to have an exchange with our other panelists. Can you please, well, perhaps sum it all up and then post the document? That would be great. Yes, very well. Well, in Senegal, we have phosphates. We also have in Kédougou the gold mine, extraction of gold, of course, has an impact on the environment. We have a paper here published in 2015 in Congo, in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. We talk about, of course, also the mines in Madagascar as well. All situations where you see that the environment is being looted, and because we need to have a dialogue between the different organizations, the governments, the multinationals, in particular those involved in the mining industry. The FMTS is ready to, of course, take part in this dialogue to go forward in this path, as well as the Association of Women in the Scientific Field. Thank you very much for your attention. Romain, thank you. Thank you very much, Rufina. If you could indeed share your document in the chat, I believe that all our panelists can share the documents in the chat. Thank you very much, Rufina. Now I'm going to give the floor to Mariano, and then I just wanted to add a question to Mariano because it was published on the chat. Somebody was asking in Spain, how indeed were the trade unions involved in those relocation plans? You go ahead.
Thank you. Well, it's been a pleasure to participate in this forum, and I'll try to be brief. We do differ internally as well in the way we carry out, in the way we face these problems. And I think it is fundamental that we collaborate, that we have transversal projects in all of our territories. Of course, this is going to take hours and hours of debate. And it would also imply us having to change positions and opinions. And I'd like to conclude with this. Behind all of these procedures carried out by multinationals, there's something that is fundamental that hasn't been mentioned, and it is corruption. Corruption is behind the projects of many multinationals. And I also believe that at global level, we need to defend policies that sanction this type of behavior. Neoliberalism, the economy with no rules, is not true. It's a lie, because there's many organizations, such as free trade agreements or the International Trade Organization, that has sanctions for those that don't comply with the market rules. I think we need to take this into account. Trade unions and trade union organizations need to have solidarity, collaboration, cooperation, and internationalism. Working at international level, because all of the problems that we see due to the activities of these large companies that have headquarters in the first world require for us at this first world to speak about the problems being faced in the third world, because we're not just talking about transition, we're talking about social justice that joins our trade union forces all around the world. You have my email. In case you have any questions, I'll be happy to share any documents with you. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Mariano.
Thank you very much, Mariano. I will give the floor to Abasa and then Yuri Simolov. Sorry if I killed your name, Yuri. Yuri, you wanted to take the floor. You're a secretary of a heavy metal trade union, which is very timely. Abasa and then Yuri. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for giving me the floor. As everyone said before, the problem is indeed there. How can we fight against multinationals? How can we make sure that multinationals work against the states and the populations? Can you hear me? Well, the interpreter can hear you. Everybody hears you very well, Abasa. So how to indeed avoid that multinationals work against the states and populations? And how can we avoid how to make sure that the states are the ones exploiting the national resources? As we said before, we have the tools, we have the solutions, but we need actions and walk the talk. So we already need to mobilize ourselves as trade unions, as civil society organizations, as populations, local and indigenous populations. We need to pool together our resources to fight against the multinationals. So we really now make sure that we work on information and, if necessary, launch our struggle, make sure that we make ourselves heard. We need to unite, we need to mobilize ourselves and organize big demonstrations to be heard. The instruments, the tools are there, but we need to come up also with solutions and proposals. We can't just say to everyone, don't do that. We also need to come up with solutions with remedies in a way, corrective measures, because obviously we need to make the best possible choice for the local populations. We know that we need resources. We need to exploit our resources and make sure that the nation benefits from them. We need labor. We need to reduce unemployment. We all need a job. That's a certainty. That's something that we all know, so that we can all contribute to the economic development of our states. But the problem is that the states, at least in Africa, do not have access to their own resources, to the national resources. So for us, what's important, what we're focused on towards when we addressed our government, is to make sure that we come up with national plans, make sure that you prioritize the national level. For instance, we have entrepreneurs in Niger who has renovated a whole site, who's invested in the local side. To be honest, this is an example, and also the company indeed is now protecting our own workers, and that company has been able to increase by 75% the salaries of all of its staff. You see, the national companies really provide more solutions to the local populations than multinationals. Whereas, for instance, you have the multinationals that do not increase the salaries. The multinationals, for instance, have not increased the salaries in 2020, 2028. The last increase in salary was in 2018, and it was up to 1%. 1%. That is the problem. We know what the problem is. We know what the solution is. We share that solution. Now we need to act so that we can implement directly those solutions. We need to share information, to organize, launch common action, and force our decision makers to respect the choice of the population, of those who have elected them. What we notice today is that the state, the government, doesn't speak the same language as the population, and therefore are disparities. Let's go on working together. Let's go on exchanging information. This will allow us to have a general overview of the issues at hand, and really to unite all together and work commonly as one. I'll stop there. And thank you very much for your attention.
Merci beaucoup, Monkaila. Effectivement, ce qu'on fait là, c'est...
Thank you indeed. This information sharing is just a first step. Beyond your fight in Niger, there is also the network of Western African unions. And that's one of the important elements, and we are going to try and work on that. And now I give the floor to Yuri. Yuri, you have the floor if you can hear us.
Apparemment, Yuri. Alors, je ne sais pas si tu nous entends, Yuri. En tout cas, ton micro semble toujours coupé.
Can you hear us?
On te voit.
On te voit un petit peu.
We can see you. You need to turn on your mic. Very good.
Yuri.
Добрый день. Я не слышу.
Hello, good afternoon. I don't hear the interpretation. It's why quite difficult for me to understand what's happening. Apologies for that.
Я без переводчика. Мне сложно понимать.
Hello, Yuri. Go ahead.
Yuri.
Да, я слышу вас.
Yes, yes, I can hear you. What I can't hear, the interpretation is difficult for me to speak.
Не включается технический перевод.
Well, somehow the interpretation function is not working at my end, so I don't really hear what he's saying to me, says Yuri.
Alors, absolument désolé. On verra si on arrive à récupérer une liaison avec Yuri.
So I'm really sorry. We'll try and get connected with Yuri a bit later on. In the meantime, does one of the panelists want to react following the Masalma Jose? Don't hesitate. Yvonne? Would you like to add something, Basalma? You have the floor. Indeed, there is a common denominator. It's hard to implement all that. We had a Congress of the CGT in Dijon, and there was a presentation made by the CGT on a law which was adopted to prosecute multinationals. So even for the subsidiary, if the subsidiary is in Burkina Faso and the headquarters in France, there are some possibilities to prosecute that company and to go back to the headquarters. Second, what about the practical organization? The forum is a step ahead to create international union, but we need to have sub-units. What do I mean by that? The sub-group in which we are part today, this afternoon, shows that we should perhaps create a WhatsApp group for all the participants in this afternoon's debate. But we need to work and to have constant exchanges with the possibility of organizing future meetings. Of course, I'm speaking about practical steps. Third point, in that direction, there are awareness themes which are important. There are actions which will be taken, but we have to reinforce solidarity. When in one country there is a problem and that we have information about that, other countries have to react by contacting the embassies of their countries in that country. When we see the damage caused to the environment, the social, cultural, or security damage created by the multinationals, they even kill all those who are against them. So we need to set up that solidarity to defend the whistleblowers in those different countries. That's what I wanted to add to the discussion. Thank you very much, Basolma. Indeed, before giving the floor, and it might be the last word for our comrade from CSA, yes, indeed, we want to make proposals to continue the discussion, because this is what came out of the group which met 2 weeks ago to gather all the organizations. We have to continue and to reinforce the union debate. I'll now give the floor to Alassamba. Thank you very much. So we have proposals to deal with the risks. You have the environmental risk, the political risks, the circumventing by multinationals to tap on gas resources, and our governments are weak and don't have the tools in such contracts. We have the curse. Environmental risks mean that people are displaced. You have the technological risk because the equipment is no longer up to date. As a union, our role is to join in the bandwagon. The battle has not yet been won. We need to involve all union organizations and the whole of civil society. We need to set up a real tripartite social dialogue with the government, employers, unions, and civil society. We need to have information and awareness campaigns, and at the same time try and set up and impose it to governments and multinationals corporate social responsibility plans to ensure reskilling of young people, the creation of infrastructure, including health infrastructure, and to have an environmental impact study and a mapping and a classification beforehand of all the problems. That's what I had to say as far as proposals and as far as the work to be assigned to organizations, so that people may benefit from their own energy resources. Thank you very much. We do hope to develop such tools. Time is pressing. We have little time left, so I'm going to give the floor to José. I ask you to be brief, and then Jean-Baptiste will conclude this workshop.
Very briefly. I think that it is clear what extractivism is with a colonial process, and the publicity amongst the authorities, national, local, and regional. It's clear, as Suela stated, that there's only a solution, and that solution is the mobilization of the populations, the trade unions. I think we need to play a fundamental role in supporting and in participating together with the affected communities by these practices. We need to commit with this fight. The projects that I have put in the chat have been paralyzed, have been stopped. There was a mine for the extraction of gold, and now we have the problem with the nuclear plants. And the successes were thanks to the mobilization of the people of the affected areas. Last week, the Galician people mobilized against this new invasion of wind farms. that destroy all our farming land. Obviously, these wind farms have a huge impact, and therefore we need to mobilize with the populations.
Pardon. Merci, José. Donc, on arrive au terme de notre table ronde. On voit
So we come to the end of the round table. We can see that we still have a lot of work ahead. We have to reinforce contacts, solidarities. So all this work, I suggest that there is a follow-up. We have to join the bandwagon. Those who are here must continue to take part to the different roundtables. There's one tomorrow on transport, where you have rail workers who will take the floor. And Alain Samban, you said that we should join the train in French, join the bandwagon. It might be an opportunity. There's also a Saturday where the draft call will be presented. So thank you very much to all those of you who took the time, who made the effort to take part to this discussion between unions, NGOs, and I hope that this won't just be a single event, but that it will create a dialogue which will continue, so as to create that awareness of people, so as to get organized and to ensure that there is progress for all these peoples in the world. Thank you very much. Have a good evening, or perhaps have a good day. We don't cover the eastern part, so have a good day, and hope to see you again very soon. Thank you. And congratulations to the moderators.
Gracias, y gracias a los y las traductoras.
Au revoir.
Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias. Au revoir.
Félicitations à la table, au manager. Voilà.